Good afternoon, everyone. The Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians was established in 1969 in response to the white paper put forth by the government of Pierre Trudeau, which at the time was the latest attempt to solve the Indian problem. That solution failed because it failed to account for the determination, or should I say, self-determination of Indigenous peoples. Ever since then, we have reiterated time and time again that we refuse to be other than what we are. I don't think it's necessary to rehash history to the nth degree. That's not our purpose here today. But sometimes you have to see where you came from in order to see where you're going to go in the future and the best path forward. The path behind us has been a dark and tragic one. As to a large degree, Canadian policy and law, when it comes to Indigenous people, has done us no favors. That tends to happen when your laws and policy have their legal basis in 15th century racism and values as enshrined in the doctrine of discovery and concepts such as terra nullius. It results in the genocide of the residential school system, the 60s scoop, murdered missing Indigenous women and girls, and the list could go on. We have come to Ottawa seeking a renewed relationship with the Crown, a relationship based on treaties, truth, and rectification for the colonial wrongdoings that continue to impact our daily lives. This is not a quick process, and it will take time to heal and mend the relationship. But it starts with truth-telling and making changes so we can really work together. Rather than having Canada continue to determine what is good for us and what authorities we have, we need Canada to recognize our jurisdictions and give us the space to determine our paths to true reconciliation. It was the doctrine of discovery from the 15th century onwards that was used to legitimize colonization of what is now called North America. This racist doctrine of international public law from Christian Europe justified the systematic takeover of our lands and the violent evangelization of our peoples. It did so by declaring our land new land, or terra nullius, despite existence of the many distinct and flourishing nations who were already here. The doctrine declared that because our peoples were not Christian, that they were not to be considered real people. Canada has now acknowledged that Turtle Island was not empty in the 15th century. They have acknowledged that it was home to distinct nations of peoples who were systematically, brutally, and deliberately colonized for the benefit of unfettered Western expansion. The same processes that are now killing the very planet we depend on for survival, by the way. Canada has admitted that the treatment of our peoples was genocide. They have also declared their relationship with Indigenous peoples one of the most important. They have begun to address quality of life issues in our community by investing more in housing, water, and other essential services. These are all good things. But what Canada has not done is admit that currently its laws and policies are still at heart based upon this racist doctrine of discovery, which is so obsolete that the Pope himself admitted to not knowing what it was. Canada continues to operate with the same false assumption of sovereign supremacy that was achieved via the dehumanization and colonization of our peoples. Through their current systems of operation, Canada continues to tell us that the same legal foundations that dismantled our nations, murdered our children, and enabled the seizure of our lands and resources today provide the framework within which we must achieve reconciliation, and this is not acceptable. Today we are demanding that Canada admit that the atrocities committed against us have not been addressed, and their approaches to reconciliation are still founded upon false notions of supremacy over Indigenous nations. which are based in this antiquated doctrine of discovery. This includes the federal inherent rights policies, the addition to reserve policies, their rights and reconciliation framework, the modern treaty processes. Canada does, in the preamble to their recent Act on UNDRIP, state their renunciation of the doctrine, but we have not seen any progress on making that a reality. It's way, way past time we started turning empathy and sympathy into action. Change can only occur when wrongs are recognized and sincere action to make amends is taken. We need a foundational shift to begin to truly renew our treaty relationships and to operate as government to government and nation to nation partners. Minister Mark Miller said to us on Monday that the impacts of the doctrine of discovery should be obvious to everyone in Canada, and we couldn't agree more. Year after year, we continue to educate and remind Canada of the same tragedies and ongoing issues in our communities. But we continue to be met with a refusal to relinquish power granted by racist doctrines. We shouldn't have to repeat our efforts time and time again to remind Canada of its wrongdoings. This is known. It's time to do something different. During our time in Ottawa, we'll be continuing to meet with federal politicians and government officials to seek recognition and support for the fact that we have the ability to and are already engaging in our own lawmaking processes, and that this is within our rights and responsibilities as sovereign nations to do so. We are seeking an investment in our own governance processes and a cease of federal policies built upon falsely assumed parliamentary sovereignty. Our nations deserve to have consistent investment for the revitalization and continued operation of our own systems of governance that is at least equal to those of non-Indigenous governments. We deserve support and investment to reinvigorate our capacities to govern, and we deserve to have non-interference from foreign governments. We deserve a return of stolen resources so we can take care of our peoples, lands, and nations as intended by creation and as defined by ourselves. Thank you for your time today.
There are no questions, so this concludes the press conference. Thank you.
All right, don't go.